and welcome to episode 15 of RaiderZone Podcast. I'm Will Brienza alongside me tonight, Brendan Devaney, Jacob Utar, as football's done with. So, no football here tonight on the show, but we'll bring you baseball as pitchers and catchers start reporting, some golf as one of the most difficult courses was led by a big name for quite some time, just for him to blow it, and then obviously basketball full in swing, both college and professional. And we'll start with baseball. So pitchers and catchers, as I stated earlier, reporting yesterday/today, and then very soon the rest of the teams will begin to report to spring training as well. And with that being said, we're going to make our very early standing predictions before spring training. Obviously, some things can happen still, injuries or there's still some guys available in free agency or trades. So we might come back to this before opening day as well. But pre-spring training projections, Brendan, I'll start with you. Just go through each division, how you think the standings will lay out, and who your wildcard teams from both leagues will be.
All right, let's get into it. So for the American League East, I've got the Yankees winning that division this year, followed closely behind by Tampa Bay. I know they won the division last year, but they lost some pieces, and the Yankees kind of got stronger in some areas. So Tampa Bay finishes second. And then Toronto, we talked about them, that they're a really exciting team to watch, very young team. They just added Springer, but they finished third. Then Boston is fourth. It's a really tough situation in Boston. And the Orioles, of course, last. In the American League Central, the Twins do it again this year. They win it. And then Chicago, they finished second, still on the rise. A very promising team there. Cleveland, of course, loses so many pieces. They're going to have a really tough year ahead of them, finishing third. And then Kansas City, fourth. And then Detroit still in the basement at fifth. American League West, not too many changes in this division, I don't think. I think Oakland still finds a way to win the division. Battle between them and Houston. I think the Astros finished second. Angels, I know they finished fourth last year, but they'll I think they're going to get better in some areas. They are going to finish third. Seattle is fourth, and then Texas fifth. Into the National League, in the East, the most exciting division in all of baseball. I got Atlanta finishing first, the Mets right behind them in second, Marlins in third, Philadelphia in fourth, and Washington in fifth. I'm sure you'll all agree that this is going to be like a really close division throughout the whole year. But so I could be wrong in some spots. But in the NL Central, the Cardinals going to overtake Chicago this year and finish first. Cubs will finish second, and then Reds, Brewers, and Pirates. And in the NL West, I still think Dodgers will finish first. Padres right behind them, though, in second. And then Giants, Diamondbacks, and Rockies. In the American League wild card, two teams. Rays going to get back to the postseason. And the White Sox finally going to be able to pull a wild card berth. Then in the National League wild card, this could be the most exciting wild card in a long time. Padres and Cubs.
Love it. I love it. A lot of great picks. We're going to have some similar picks here and there, but just looking at mine compared to yours, there are some differences. So we'll open it to discussion after we get through all of ours. Jacob, now your early predictions for the MLB standings and wildcard picks.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Well, I got a lot of the same things, but I got some differences too. The American League East, I agree on the winner there. The Yankees are going to win it. They just have the most firepower, I believe. Last year, I believe if the season would have been longer, they might have actually beat the Rays in the division. But I mean, since the season was shortened, the Rays obviously get the win there. I don't have the Rays second here, though. I really do believe in the Blue Jays and all the offseason additions that they made. I'm going to have them second, very closely above Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is just barely going to miss out on that second place, but the Rays, they kind of regressed a little bit in my mind this offseason. And then I got the Red Sox 4, the Orioles 5. The American League Central, it's totally identical. Twins, the offseason moves that they've made, I think they stay on top. They're going to win the division. The White Sox are going to be second. The Tribes are going to be third. Kansas City Royals 4 and Detroit Tigers 5. The American League West, I was going back and forth here between if Oakland or Houston would win, but I just like Houston's roster a little bit better. I'm going to go with the Astros winning the American League West once again. It's going to be a close race, though. And in my opinion, the two teams that have the wild card berths, to me, might actually end up having a better record than the Astros. Kind of similar to what we've seen in years past at times with wild card teams. I think that could be the case here. But yeah, the A's will be second. The Angels will be third. The Mariners 4 and the Rangers 5. And so my American League playoffs, I actually ranked the division winners too. I think the Yankees will have the best record in the league. The Twins will be second. The Astros will be third. And then my wild card teams, I got the White Sox getting that first wild card spot at 4. And I got the Blue Jays just narrowly beating out the Rays for that 5th spot. So those are my 2 wild card teams there. And then the NL East, I'm going with the Mets here for top spot, but I think it's going to be really hard. I don't think they're going to have that great of a record, only because I think that these teams are going to beat up on each other so much in the division that it's going to obviously cause some teams to get some more losses here. So I'm going to say the Mets 1, the Braves 2, the Phillies at 3. I'm going to go the Nationals at 4, but I really do think that the Phillies and Nationals can flip-flop either way there. And I'm just going Miami Marlins 5 here. I think they'll be a decent team. I just think that they're going to be the worst team in what's obviously the best division in baseball this year. Then in the Central, I think the Cardinals are going to overtake the Cubs here. So that means that the Cubs will definitely be second there. I think the Brewers will be a distant third, and then the Reds 4. Pirates, I think they could be the worst team in baseball this year, so they'd be 5. And then in the West, still the Dodgers lead to lose, so they'd be in first there. Padres second. Giants third. I do think the Giants are going to have a pretty good year this year, but definitely not wild card worthy. And then the Diamondbacks 4 and the Rockies 5. And so in the NL, I would have Dodgers as the best team. I got the Cardinals as the second best team because I think they'll do better in their division than, say, the Mets and the Braves would do. I still think the Mets and Braves are going to have a lot of wins this year, but I just think that in this case, the Cardinals are going to end up having more wins than both teams. So the Mets would be 3 for me. 4, I'm going to go the Padres, and that 5, that 5th and final spot, I'm going to go with the Braves here, just over the Cubs and teams like that. But that NL East, I think, is just going to be incredible this year.
All right, and a couple more similarities there between Jacob and I. So this is how mine goes. For the AL East, I have the Yankees winning as well, but the Blue Jays getting that second spot. A lot of key additions, and with Tampa Bay losing their ace, I'm just not feeling them anymore. I think they fall off, and they hit 3rd, Boston 4, and then Baltimore 5th. In the AL Central, I have the White Sox winning the Central Division. Minnesota close 2nd, Cleveland 3rd, and then Kansas City and Detroit rounding out at 4 and 5. And then in the AL West, I have Houston edging out Oakland just by a couple of games, and Oakland gets that second spot, with Angels following in 3rd, and then similar to you guys, Seattle in 4, and then Texas in 5. And I ranked my quickly after you said you ranked yours. This is how mine would look. I think it's pretty obvious the Yankees should get the 1 seed in the American League. I have the White Sox 2, Houston 3, Minnesota 4, and Toronto 5. So Minnesota and Toronto would be the 2 wildcard teams, and Oakland just missing out as Toronto edges out both Oakland and Tampa Bay. Now for the National League, I have the Mets winning the East, between 90 and 96 wins in that area. And Atlanta, just a few games back, probably in the similar area. I would say like 96 wins to the Mets, 93 to the Braves. It's going to be a really close race between those two. Phillies fall off a little bit. I think they're like in the 81 to 85 win range, just a little bit over 500. And then Miami in 4 and Washington in 5. And I don't think they'll be that far behind. I think they'll be a game or two under 500. Like you guys said, it's just going to be that division beating up on each other and winning series against other teams. In the Central, I have Cardinals taking over 2. Arnold, a huge addition to that lineup, and other key pieces were added this offseason as well. Chicago 2, Cincinnati 3rd. I think that Trevor Bauer loss is going to be huge for their rotation, but I still think they can find 3rd place. Milwaukee in 4th, and then way distant from these 4 teams. I think these 4 teams could potentially play some close baseball, but the distance 5th is the Pittsburgh Pirates. I agree with you, Jacob. I see them being the only 100-loss team in baseball this season. And then for the National League, obviously Dodgers 1, San Diego 2. I think that's pretty unanimous amongst all baseball watchers. 3, San Francisco, 4, Arizona, 5, Colorado. And LA would take the top seed. The Mets would get the 2 seed, St. Louis 3, San Diego 4, and Atlanta with that 5th seed. And that would be the playoff. I think a San Diego-Atlanta wild card would be really fun to watch. So I imagine all the firepower. You have Acuna versus Tatis. That'd be quite the game. But those are my very early predictions before spring training for baseball. But yeah, so like I said, a lot of similarities. But some differences. Brendan still has Tampa Bay getting that 2nd spot in the East. I'm the only one that chose Chicago. I think the difference maker for me is the rotations. I think Chicago has a far better rotation, and they also added pieces to the bullpen. Now, Minnesota has a great lineup, but Chicago's lineup's not too far behind, in my opinion. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that as well. Is it going to be close, you guys think, or do you think Minnesota runs away with it?
I'm going to say that Minnesota probably wins it in the 3 to 5 game range. So I do agree with you on that the White Sox rotation might be a little bit better than the Twins, but I'm really in love with the Twins lineup right now. I think it's one of the better ones in the American League. I think that's what puts them over the top there. I mean, they have firepower when they're up at bat, and they have a great lineup in the infield and even good in the outfield too. So I would say that the Twins, just from the lineup standpoint, that's what separates them from the White Sox. Just 3 to 5 games, so it's decently close, but it's not like it's neck and neck the whole entire time.
Now the Central's touchy topic right now. Brendan mentioned the Indians losing a lot of players. Where do you guys see them finishing as far like in perspective with Minnesota and Chicago? Is it they're a distant 3rd, or do you still think Terry Francona can work his magic and get the Indians above 500?
Yeah, I think they're gonna be able to just contend and not be in close games with Minnesota and Chicago. They'll probably fall behind about 2 or 3 games of Chicago. Terry Francona he's a Hall of Fame manager. He's gonna have his guys ready to play. You got a lot of young guys coming up from Columbus in the minor leagues, I'm sure, this year. And he knows how to put them in positions where they can succeed. It's just that there's so many question marks right now that they're not in a position going into spring training to just go out, have a real hot start to the season, and make themselves contenders with Chicago and Minnesota. They're not going to get blown out of the water in the division like Kansas City and Detroit might. But it's just there's too many pieces that aren't stable and that I'm sure are going to be permanent throughout the year, that they're going to be able to hang with Chicago and Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with Brendan on that standpoint. Like, I would say that I'd have the Indians at about 83 to 85 wins because the talent's not really there, but you have the manager and Terry Francona, and he's always going to put his best foot forward. He's going to figure out how to utilize all these young guys and all these pieces moving in and out of the lineup too. And you still have a pretty good pitching rotation. I mean, it's still one of the best in the American League if Shane Bieber still can perform like how he did last year, which I don't see why he wouldn't. So they're going to win games. It's going to be ugly, I think, how they win games. I think it's going to be a lot of 2-1 games that they'd win. But I can see them being above 500 for sure, because as long as you have Terry Francona, you're probably going to be over 500 every time. But if they didn't have Terry Francona, I would probably say they'd be less than 500. But it's just my belief in Terry Francona right there.
Yeah, I can see that too, Jacob. Like a lot of 3-0, 5-4 wins for the Indians, but then you're going to get like the 9-0, 10-2 loss to Minnesota or the Yankees. Like a lot of close wins, but a lot of ugly losses this year, just because of the inexperience on this team.
Yeah,
just the growing pains.
When you said the record area there, Jacob, I kind of agreed with that. When I look at this, when I wrote this down, I was thinking about 96 and 66 for the White Sox, 92 and 70 for the Twins, and then the Indians finishing about 10 to 12 games back from the Sox at like 86 and 76 or 84 and 78, somewhere around there, maybe 83 and 79, just fluctuating there, but over 500. But in that 10 to 12 game back area where, with 2 weeks left in the season, you're out. But I completely agree with the take that it's the rotation for me with the accompaniment of Terry Francona. You still got Bieber, Plesac, Savali. McKenzie showed promise. Logan Allen's going to be having a bigger role in the rotation this year. Maybe he could step up. And then the bullpen's not terrible either. Karinchak showed a lot last year. Actually ranked in the top 5 of all relief pitchers coming into the season. Whitgren's decent. You'll have Emmanuel Clase back, see what he does. I don't know if he'll throw 100 now that he got busted for PEDs, but I'm sure he still has some firepower in that arm nonetheless. He's 23 years old, so.
Brought Brian Shaw back, too.
Oh, yeah.
Be our closer.
Yeah, play him in the playoffs. As far as the National League goes, I think we all agree the NL East is going to be very competitive. We're all pretty similar. Mets, Atlanta, top 2, and then the bottom 3 is very shaky, but I'm going to ask you guys this. Do you think all 5 teams can go above 500?
Ooh, well, I think that the Mets.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, the Mets will be in like the 93 to 95 win range. I think that the Braves are going to be in like the 90 to 95 win range right there. Philadelphia, I can see going above 500. The Nationals, it's a little dicey. Like they might be right at 500. The Marlins. I think that the Marlins have a lot of young talent that could possibly get them above 500, but I'm going to say the Marlins probably are the team, if any of them, that would go under 500 just because they have to play each other so much during the season. These other teams are just going to beat them up too much just because of that young, inexperienced team. I know they got some experience in the playoffs, but I just don't see how they'd really be able to compete with these other 4. So I would probably say the Marlins are my best bet for under 500. Nationals maybe, but I could see the Nationals being like right at 500.
Rarely do you see in baseball divisions beat up on each other. You'll see divisions in football beat up on each other and stuff like that. But this is a rare instance, I think, where all these teams are like postseason caliber teams. Like in any other division, they might be able to make it. But like this is a weird division where you have high quality teams, a lot of talent on all these teams, where I just think they're going to beat up on each other the whole year. And one of those teams are going to get the short leg on that. And like Jacob said, that might be Miami, that might be Washington. So it's going to be disappointing for one of those teams. But as far as everyone going above 500, I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. We'll see. I think the NL East is going to be the division to watch all season long, and I think you guys will agree with me there. Now, before we part ways with baseball and head into a little bit of golf, your very early World Series prediction, who's winning against who? Brendan. I didn't put this on the script, so I'm throwing it out of the blue.
This is interesting. So in the National League, I am going to go with San Diego.
Okay.
Not the Dodgers. I think Dodgers they kind of stacked up again, but I think there's a curse there from Trevor Bauer. I don't think that's getting talked a lot about. There's a curse with Trevor Bauer wherever he goes.
Cuts his finger up with the Tribe World Series.
Yeah, so I don't think Dodgers make it in the National League. I'm going to go with the Padres. I just love that team. And to be able to see Fernando Tatis Jr. in the World Series, that would be a lot of fun. And then in the American League, I don't think it's really tough. Yankees are going to make it for the first time in over a decade. So Padres, Yankees, World Series.
Who's winning?
Yankees.
Okay.
And all of America is going to be up in arms about it.
Okay. Jacob, your very early World Series prediction.
I mean, I agree with you, Brendan. I would love to see Tatis Jr. in the World Series. He's one of my favorite baseball players now, just because of all the swag he plays with, everything like that. But
new age.
Exactly. But I'm gonna say not the Padres here. It's hard for me to pick against the Dodgers. The Dodgers are gonna go to the World Series again for me. They just reloaded on an already incredible team. They just added even more talent. So I don't see how they don't win the National League. And then the AL, like how you were talking about the Trevor Bauer curse, I almost want to say the Yankees have a curse on them too, because it just seems so hard for them to get to the World Series now, after it seemed like for literally since the start of baseball until like the early 2000s that they would just get back to the World Series time and time again. So I'm going to say they're not going to make the World Series. I'm going to go with the Twins here just because I love that lineup and everything. I think the Twins are going to make it. Dodgers are going to run right through the Twins, though, and Dodgers repeat as champions.
Dodgers over Twins.
See, before you make your pick, like I get what you're talking about, Jacob. Like the Yankees have had such a hard time getting past these other teams in the American League, but now 2021 they have like a clear path. There's no other than them. There's like no dominant team in the American League. It seems like all the talent went over to the National League. The Braves stacking up, the Mets stacking up. Like, National League took everyone from the American League, it almost seems like. So I think there's no clear-cut favorite other than the Yankees in the American League. Like, I think this year it's World Series or bust for New York, and I think they finally have a path to get there.
Well, you see, I'd agree with you on that, but my whole problem with it, too, is the guys that they have on there, I think of, like, who their stars are. You got Aaron Judge. He's either home run or strikeout. So if he comes into the playoffs and he's striking out, then that's no good. Giancarlo Stanton, he's the same exact way. Gary Sanchez, he's the same exact way. That's what I've always thought the Yankees' problem has been in the postseason these past couple of years, is that they have guys that can get red hot at any time, but then they can get ice cold at the same time too. So I agree with you from a talent standpoint. The Yankees, clear-cut best team in the American League, but I just think the way that their bats are so inconsistent at times, I just don't feel confident in really saying that they'd make the World Series. And I'm in love with the Twins this year. I think that the Twins have a chance to potentially get past the Yankees, even though the Yankees definitely do have the better team. I'd agree with you about that.
Well, you'll know what you'll get from LeMahieu, that's for sure. And that's hits. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why I feel this way, but I feel like the Subway Series is going to happen once again in the World Series. I'm going Yankees-Mets as my very early prediction. I'm here for it. I'd absolutely love to see that. I think when you get two teams from the same city that have a little rivalry between them, it adds to excitement. Another World Series I'd really like to see, I don't know if it will happen, is San Diego-Chicago. I think just two very young teams with very dynamic players. I think that'd be just a fun World Series to watch. I think there'd be a lot of swagger in the game. But for some reason, I'm feeling a Subway Series here in 2021. We'll see. It's going to be hard to get to the Dodgers. I agree with you, Jacob. They reloaded on a loaded roster. But the Mets also reloaded on an okay roster, and I think Cohen's going to do anything he can come the trade deadline or anything to make sure that his team's in the right position to continue this season. You got to love having an owner that likes to spend money. I wish I knew what that felt like. But and then I'm agreeing with Brendan, the Yankees. I agree with Jacob. They do have the inconsistencies, but they also add a lot to that rotation this offseason. And if their rotation stays healthy, they may not need complete consistency from the bats just because their pitchers will hold the other lineups at bay. So I'm going Subway Series for now, but as we can say, like I said, a lot can happen just from spring training. Injuries can happen. More signings can happen, so we'll do another one in about a month. And then maybe trade deadline we'll figure out what we are thinking World Series wise as we get to that halfway point. But there's a lot of baseball left. Today's just the start of a long, long season as we go back to 162 games. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited for the long season. A lot of people were pushing, hey, shorter season, it keeps you, but the records are unbreakable at that point, and I think that's what disappoints me. You'll never see a 50 home run season in a 60 game season, unless they're taking some very extreme steroids. But that is it for the MLB. As pitchers and catchers report, we'll be back next week with hopefully more news as all players begin to report. But now we'll talk a little bit about golf. We haven't talked about it in a while, but we had quite the tournament here this past weekend as Daniel Berger wins the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am this past weekend in California. Jordan Spieth, oh man, he led it after 3 rounds, was playing lights out. It seems like Spieth always rises to the occasion on the toughest courses, but he could not hold on, unfortunately. He shoots 2 under in round 4. Still a great 4 days, but when you have Berger and company shooting 5, 6 under in that last day and just sneaking past you, it's really tough on Spieth. Jacob, I'll start with you. Are you surprised by Daniel Berger's comeback there at the end, and were you pushing for Spieth?
Well, I was definitely pushing for Spieth because he's one of the most exciting golfers to watch, in my opinion, whenever he's got his A game going on, which at times over the past 2 weeks he definitely has. But I'm not surprised by Daniel Berger at all. Daniel Berger, he's not really well known. I mean, people know him if you watch the PGA Tour, but if you're just a casual watcher, you wouldn't really know who Daniel Berger is. But he's now won twice ever since golf has come back from the COVID pandemic, and he was the PGA Tour Rookie of the Year before. He's contended in majors. He's one of the better golfers in the world, honestly. So I'm not surprised at all by seeing him come up. He even said before the final round that he felt totally comfortable with his position being behind Jordan Spieth, that he was just going to go out and play his style of golf and that he felt he could win, which obviously he did. But Jordan Spieth here, I mean, over these past 2 weeks, he's led after 54 holes, which is a good sign. What's not a good sign is that he's been very inconsistent on those last days, because what we've seen from Spieth now in his past 8 rounds is 6 of the rounds he looks like old Jordan Spieth. He's making all of his putts. He's keeping the ball in the fairway. He's putting the ball on the green. So he's looking like old Jordan Spieth there. And then he just collapses on the final rounds, unfortunately. And it's not really even an epic collapse. It's just when you're playing so good those first 3 days, he just can't piece it together really on the 4th day.
Yeah.
But it's also a good sign, though, that he's going to break through eventually, because he's even talked about it these past 2 weeks. This has been almost 4 years, which is crazy to think about since he has won a golf tournament. So he really just kind of forgets how to close it out, because from personal experience, when you're in a golf tournament and you're trying to close it out, you know that you're in the lead, you have a lot of thoughts going through your head. So he's going to have to go through certain rounds like this where he has to figure out how to really get those negative thoughts out of his head and just focus on winning. So right now, I'm just going to have a bold take here. We're a few weeks out from the Masters. That's in early April. Jordan Spieth plays Augusta National better than anybody I've seen not named Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just go out on a limb here, say if Jordan Spieth keeps his hot play up, which I don't see why he won't, he's just gearing up towards it because he always shows up in majors too. I think he's going to win the Masters this year. I always say that, but I genuinely believe it this year just because he plays it so well. He's playing his best golf he has in 4 years. So I don't see why not. I don't see why he can't win the Masters if he keeps this up.
It's really weird hearing you say the Masters in April, because it feels like just yesterday we watched the Masters because of the delay pushed back to November. Usually have to wait a year for that, but we get 5 month breaks and then boom, the Masters is back. But hot take there, Jacob. We'll come back in a couple months and see where your take lands. If Spieth can take the Masters, or if we'll see. I mean, if he keeps his hot play up, I agree. He definitely will be in contention, probably top 10 throughout the 4 rounds. But we'll see. Brendan, your thoughts on Pebble Beach? Which, by the way, on Valentine's Day, I played Pebble Beach at a golf simulator in Canton. That golf simulator, I don't know if it was the simulator or if it was Pebble Beach, but that was the hardest round of golf I ever played in my life. I only played 9 holes before I quit, and that was about like 35 over. So, Brendan, your thoughts on the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am?
Yeah, well, first off, Daniel Berger is kind of one of the up-and-coming stars of the PGA Tour. I think it's his second win within the year. He won the Charles Schwab Challenge in a playoff against Colin Morikawa, who is another young star on the tour. And then he's played in a few playoffs as well. He had a close back in 2017. He had a close loss against Jordan Spieth, actually. So he's definitely one of the more underrated stars. Like Jacob said, you really don't know him if you don't pay attention to golf. But yeah, I'm not surprised that he won this. He's really underrated. Definitely plays in the clutch and in the back nine of tournaments. So not surprised that he won this, but also not surprised that Spieth blew this. Jacob, that is such a hot take that he's going to win the Masters this year. Because I totally agree with you. He is one of the most exciting golfers on the tour. I love watching him play. When he won when he literally walked off at the Travelers Championship, I think it was, and just threw his club in the air and chest bumped his caddy. Like, that is the golf I love to watch. But he has just disappointed me time and time again. I think it was the 2017 Masters where he had the lead in the back nine on the final day and then blew it. That's happened to him so many times that, like, if you're going to bet on golf, don't bet on Jordan Spieth. Like, even though if he has a lead on Sunday, he just cannot figure out how to close it out. And he hasn't shown and proven that he is capable of closing it out. Sure, he's played hot lately, but as far as an early pick to win the Masters, I would not put my money on Jordan Spieth. He's definitely one of the most disappointing golfers. I'm not going to say overrated, but one of the more disappointing golfers on the tour than the last 4 years.
You're putting your money on Bryson DeChambeau. I love that guy. What are you going to say, Jacob?
All Jordan really needs to do, to be completely honest with you guys, is if he shoots any round, the final round, under like the 69, 68 range, I think he's going to be totally fine, and he's definitely going to break through. It doesn't even have to mean that he's going to win. It's just getting that confidence back that, okay, I can go out and shoot 68, 66, something like that those first 3 days. And it's like just this thing in his head, which I know what he's experiencing. I've had experience with this. Like, you get to that final day, and then it's like, man, I can't just piece it together. So I think if he has just a couple rounds, not even meaning that he'd end up winning the tournaments, just days under 68, just stuff like that, he's definitely going to be – that switch is going to turn back on again. He's going to be able to piece it all together and have one round. Maybe it won't be at the Masters. I hope it is at the Masters. I still am confident that it will be there, but I just feel like sometime soon he's definitely going to break through and he's going to get back on track, which makes golf so much more exciting when he's back on track and winning.
Yeah, so again, like you guys said, I'm not surprised by Berger either. A lot of people on Twitter were, but a lot of people on Twitter also don't watch golf like some people. I agree with both your takes. Up-and-coming star. He could be the future of the sport. He'll be up in there competing in most tournaments. As far as Spieth, I was definitely pushing for him. If you would have seen me play Pebble Beach, you probably wish he was playing me. But, Jacob, if what you say happens, I won't be mad. That's for sure. Now, do I think it will happen? But if it does happen, I'd be very happy because, like you said, Spieth, when he's on top, one of the most fun players to watch on the tour, and if he can pull it off in Augusta, that'd be amazing. We've seen him shoot very good there. I believe he owns the course record tied with Tiger Woods, correct?
Yes, he does, and every single year, too. He's one of the first guys. I believe he was the youngest player ever to play in the final pairing because the year before he won, he had to share the lead, I believe, with Bubba Watson heading into the last day. So ever since he started playing there, he's always shot very low scores. So
it's his course. You never know what's going to happen. Depends on the 4 days he brings to the table. But if it does happen, I won't be mad. That's for sure. But that's our quick, short rant about golf. As we get into more tournaments in the future, we'll continue to talk about it. And come April, hopefully, Jacob can brag about his very early take on the Masters there. But that will take us now to some basketball, as we'll begin with college. As far as the rankings go, Gonzaga and Baylor remain the top two, as both remain undefeated. As far as Baylor goes, it's really easy to stay undefeated when you don't play any games, but they are looking to resume play February 23rd. Top five, though, is rounded out by all Big Ten, as Michigan takes a 3 spot, the Buckeyes in 4, and the Fighting Illini moving back into the top 5 at 5. Guys, Brendan, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on last week's action in college basketball and just your thoughts on the Big Ten, man. 3 of the top 5 spots.
Yeah, not too many surprises this past week. Ohio State had a really good showing on Saturday against a pretty good Indiana team. Same with Michigan on Sunday. They took on Wisconsin, who is another top-ranked Big Ten team. But they kind of made it look easy. They definitely proved why they're number 3. The Big Ten definitely just having one of the best seasons overall in conference history. Even Rutgers playing really well right now. I'm not expecting Rutgers to make a deep run in the tournament, but just to show you how all around stacked they are. Even out of conference, taking a look at other conferences in college basketball, Virginia had a really good game on Saturday against North Carolina, then had a letdown on Monday night against Florida State. So who knows what Virginia is going to look like in the tournament come March. They're kind of a up and down team right now, hot and cold all season long they've been. And still, it's kind of crazy that they're still the defending champs. But they're, I think, poised to win the ACC tournament. But I would not pick them to make a Final Four run this year. But then, looking ahead this week, I think we can all echo it. One big game, and that's on Saturday. Is it on Saturday?
I think it's Sunday.
It's the game. It's the Sunday.
Yep, Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, number 3 Michigan, number 4 Ohio State. I don't know if this rivalry is more heated now on the hardwood than the gridiron, but this is the most. This
definitely.
I can't talk. This is definitely going to be the most exciting Michigan-Ohio State game in all of sports in the last 10 years. So.
Yeah, I was going to say something before we got into games looking forward. I think it's all next week you look at some games. There's a lot of games where it's just ranked versus unranked, a lot of just finishing up conference play before we head into the conference tournaments. But there's that one game that sticks out, and I think we can all agree that's going to be the game of the week in the coming week, and that's that Ohio State-Michigan game. Nothing like some Sunday afternoon basketball, so I'm pretty sure we'll all be in tune for that one. Jacob, your thought on last week's action, looking ahead, and the Big Ten.
Yeah, I tried to make this take up and really not talk that much about the Big Ten, but it's literally impossible. I don't know if I've ever seen a conference dominate the way that they have. I'm looking at this Big Ten, the list of teams. There could be like 10 to 12 teams I think that personally would make the tournament out of the Big Ten, which is crazy to think. The tournament is just going to be incredibly interesting, and it's really going to show me who the Final Four teams out of the Big Ten are, because really, I think it's obvious Michigan and Ohio State, everyone's going to think they can maybe make the Final Four, but everyone seems to forget that Iowa was ranked in the top 4 at the beginning of the year, and they've kind of had a drop-off, but they still have Luka Garza, who's probably the best player in college basketball right now, so they can make a run. Illinois is right there at 5. Wisconsin's super talented, which, by the way, Wisconsin, they played a great game against Michigan. It's just Michigan played an even better game, and I'm even more confident in Michigan now than I was before, just because they had 3 weeks off. You have just an incredibly tough game coming out of a COVID situation. Really just going down 15 early to Wisconsin there in that first half and managing to come all the way back. That was just a great game for the Wolverines, and it's really going to show how they could be resilient come tournament time, not just in the Big Ten, but in March Madness. So Big Ten, just incredible this year. Like how I said, 10 to 12 teams would not surprise me getting in there from the Big Ten. And also, I like how Brendan touched on Virginia, because I think that the ACC is hurting severely this year because, we look at it, Virginia is the best team in the ACC most likely, but they're very inconsistent this year at times. And that defense has always been solid. They played a great Florida State team, just gave up 81 points. So that's not getting me confident at all about Virginia making a deep tournament run. And it's a great win for Florida State. I just don't think Florida State can get to the Final Four. So the ACC right now does not look like they have many teams, if any, to me, that can make the Final Four. Because obviously we know North Carolina and Duke the traditional blue bloods are just struggling so much right now in that conference as well. But I was also pretty surprised to see Villanova lose. I know that Creighton was pretty good, but I just thought that they would have won out really in that situation and taken that Big East. I'm not so sure now if they're going to win the Big East because they've been inconsistent in the past couple weeks. So we'll see what happens with Villanova. And also, shout out to some of the smaller schools. Missouri Valley Conference, Loyola Chicago, they are ranked right now. But Drake ends up beating them. So Drake was undefeated for that super long time, but then they lose, obviously fall out of the top 25 because they don't have that signature win. Now they get that signature win over a ranked Loyola team. Hopefully we have 2 Missouri Valley Conference teams in the tournament this year because that's the thing that the NCAA does a lot. We talked about the college football playoff. They underrepresent the smaller schools. They do the same thing in the NCAA tournament. I remember a couple of years ago, Murray State and Belmont were both getting 30 wins, and only the conference champion got in, which is just ridiculous. So hopefully this win for Drake really gets them in a solid spot if they win out to end up being an at-large bid. And the same thing with Loyola Chicago, because that would just be great for the game just to see smaller schools in there as well. And then the games I'm looking forward to this week, obviously Ohio State and Michigan. That is a huge game right there. I mean, I can remember when I was younger and started watching college basketball, I'd see Evan Turner go up against Michigan. Those were always great games. And Aaron Kraft going up against like Trey Burke and those guys when Michigan was at its peak too. Those were great games. We're going to see a game similar to that. These two, this might be the game of the year right now, honestly. It might even end up being better than Gonzaga and Iowa was earlier in the year. And then the other games I'm looking out for, Wisconsin and Iowa. That's going to be a huge Big Ten matchup as well. I really don't know who's going to win that game. I'm going to go with Iowa here right now, but Wisconsin can very well win that game. West Virginia and Texas in the Big 12, that's going to be a great matchup because we all know how much I love Texas right now. I still think Texas is a Final Four team potentially if they can piece it together at the right time. So that's going to be a great test for them in West Virginia. And finally, another Big 12 game. It's not a ranked versus ranked, but Iowa State and Baylor, because like how you touched on it, Will, Baylor is undefeated, but it's because they haven't played many games. This will be their first game in 3 weeks. I want to see how they look, see if they're still strong, see if I can still say that they can potentially be a Final Four team. But, yeah, it's just going to be interesting. See if they can play just as well as Michigan did coming off a 3-week hiatus themselves.
Yeah, so my thoughts on last week, a lot of the same that you guys talked about. Hopefully the Loyola Chicago run in the tournament a couple years ago where they went on a little run helps the case for both them and Drake. But another game, Oklahoma-West Virginia, that was one I watched. That was a really fun game, double overtime. Austin Reeves drops 28, including 4 in the final minute to close out the Sooners' win 91-90. Big 12 basketball looking fun to watch as well, kind of beating up on each other. But I think it's going to be a Big 12, Big 10 dominant field come Selection Sunday. Looking forward, I'm glad you said something about the Baylor-Iowa State game. I was hesitant to just because Iowa State's 2-15 and Baylor 17-0. But when you take that many weeks off from competitive basketball, it's going to take a toll. Now, this might not be the game where we can judge whether Baylor looks right or not, because they definitely should take down Iowa State despite being off a few weeks. But this is the only game they have before Thursday when they play number 13 West Virginia. That will be not next week, but the week after. But that's a game where we could see Baylor slip up if they're not fresh after all this time off. They're not coming in used to playing competitive basketball. That's definitely a game where we could see them slip. So that Tuesday game against Iowa State is big in the aspect that Baylor, this is their first live action in 3 weeks, and they got a big game coming up in 2 days after that. But yeah, Big Ten, definitely going to 10 to 12 teams. It's crazy how good this conference is. ACC, usually that conference we see puts 7 to 9, maybe sometimes 10 teams in. They'll be lucky to get 4 or 5. But it's going to be interesting to see how these last couple of weeks play out, and I'm very excited to start talking about conference tournaments. I don't know about you guys, but we'll pick our winners for each conference who we think might make a run. And we'll probably be wrong just because basketball is so unpredictable, especially when it comes to college hoops. The NBA not as much, and that'll be our segue into the NBA. We have more basketball. Can we just take a minute and talk about the Utah Jazz? 19 of their last 20. They're sitting at 23-5. They're in first place in the West. Did either of you expect to see this from the Jazz from the start?
All right, so I never would have expected 19 out of 20. That's just crazy, or a 23-5 record. I thought that the Jazz had a shot at being a top 4 or 5 team, just because the makeup of this team is very old school to me. They focus a lot on defense when you have Rudy Gobert, Royce O'Neal, Derek Favors, guys like that. They're just hard-nosed, great defensive players. And then you add on scorers like Mike Conley. He can facilitate the offense. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell's the best scorer on that team. Joe Ingles fits that team perfectly because he's a great three-point shooter and he can facilitate the ball. And Jordan Clarkson is the best bench player in basketball for this season so far. So, yeah, definitely 4 or 5. Would have never expected them to be like this, though. Kind of reminds me, I know a lot of people are comparing them to when the Warriors came up. I wouldn't go that far just yet, but they show some similarities because that Warriors team had a lot of great flow in their offense and was really dominating games. Jazz are beating everybody by double digits, it seems like, this year, too. That's what's even more impressive about this win streak. So they definitely are somewhat resembling those Warriors on the come up. I'm not fully going to say that they are the Warriors just yet, but to me, I don't see why they would not be a top 2 or 3 team in the Western Conference the rest of the season.
Brendan, did you expect this from the Utah Jazz, the guys that shut down the NBA last year?
Man, you're bringing that up. Okay.
Rudy Gobert. There's going to be a 30 for 30 the day he touched. What if I told you Rudy Gobert touched all the mics?
And ended sports for over a year.
Yeah, he shut down sports, not just basketball, honestly. But did you expect this from the Jazz?
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone would. I don't know if this is like trying to be a season where Rudy Gobert like avenges that mistake that he made, but like I don't think anyone would have thought. Just looking at this past week, huge win over Milwaukee. Gobert puts up 27. Then they take down Miami, which I know Heat having a disappointing season, but then they go and beat Philadelphia, a really good Philadelphia team. And that, I think, Philadelphia win, and that was over a 10-point win. So, like Jacob said, the Jazz are winning these games with ease, and that's what makes it even more remarkable and just astonishing that they're having this heck of a start to the season. I don't think they're going to be able to keep this up. They'll have a downfall here at some point because every team does. And, you know, like Jacob said, they're not Golden State that won 73 games in a season. But they're definitely going to be a surprising team this year. Definitely going to make a playoff run. Can't count them out of going to the Western Conference Finals and trying to compete with the Lakers. That would be a really good series to watch. It came out of nowhere. And that's just what's crazy about it. And not, big name guys, like Jacob said. There's not one superstar on this Utah team, and that's what makes it even more fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree. It really came out of nowhere. They had the long win streak snapped, and then you don't even realize that they go right back to winning 7 in a row now, 8 in a row. So it's unheard of. 23-5. It's gonna be really interesting to see if they can win the next 2. They got a tough one coming up this Friday night, which we'll get into. But if you're 25-5 through 30 games, you're sitting pretty. That's for sure. And at that point, they'd be 21 of their last 22, which also is very crazy to think about, that they would have started the season 4-4, and since then they literally started the season 4-4, and since then they're 19-1. So quite the run they've gone on. But Sixers, they continue to lead pace in the East. I feel like the East is just at this point. The West we're watching for the West. Who's going to win the West? Because I think the West is going to win the finals. And that's almost every year, it seems like, for basketball. Nets starting to heat up a little bit. They were 14-12. They've won 4 in a row. Even with Katie and Kyrie out, James Harden clutches it up and gets the win last night. But before we get into last week's action and a couple predictions for a couple big games this next week, there's some trade heating up amongst 2 big men in the league that Jacob wanted to touch on, and that is the Cavaliers' big man Andre Drummond and the Pistons' big man Blake Griffin. A lot of heating up on trade speculation. Where will they go? What are they worth? Jacob, I'll start with you. Do you see these guys shipped and where? And what do you think their trade value is? Do you think the Cavs and Pistons can get a haul, or do you think it's kind of just dumping the contracts?
So first off, just to touch on Blake Griffin, he's not getting traded anywhere because Blake Griffin, I mean, we talked about, or at least the analysts talked about a lot, how when John Wall got traded, his contract was absolutely atrocious. It was like the $47 million range, but at least he's still producing a lot. Blake Griffin's coming off a bunch of injuries. He's not the same player anymore. He hasn't dunked in 2 years. He's going to get paid. He's going to get paid $36 million this year. He has a player option that he's most definitely going to accept, because if you don't accept $39 million when you have that option to, you're absolutely crazy, especially with his injury history. So Blake Griffin, to me, is going to get bought out by the Detroit Pistons, which is a good move for both of them because, honestly, if the Pistons traded him, they were just going to get a horrible contract in return and probably no draft picks, anything like that. So Blake Griffin, to me, will be bought out by the Pistons. He's still going to get a lot of money from it. And there's two teams I'm eyeballing with Blake Griffin. That would be the Miami Heat, who this season, they lost Myers Leonard. And Myers Leonard, people don't really like to talk about that much, but he was crucial last year to the Heat really being successful pre-bubble and pre-playoffs, really, because he did serve as their kind of starting center and power forward. They don't have a lot of depth down there other than Bam Adebayo, so bringing a veteran in there like Blake Griffin, that can be beneficial to them. Blake Griffin can fill a role right there where all he's got to do is score around 12 to 15 a night, just provide some support down there for Adebayo, let Jimmy Butler and his guys do all the scoring. I think that fits perfectly for him. Or two, this is just an idea right here. Anthony Davis is out for the next month, and he could be out for longer just because it is an Achilles/calf injury. Maybe he goes to the Lakers, and maybe he just serves as a backup when AD comes back, but for now he'd be the starting power forward there. And then also, I look at Brooklyn. If he's willing to take the veterans minimum, why wouldn't you go in a situation in Brooklyn when, if he goes to Brooklyn, I would say that they'd probably go to the NBA Finals there because, I mean, it's just so much star power right there. And yet again, he doesn't have to be the guy. He can just be the new Blake Griffin and just fill a role for them because they need front court depth as well. So I can see him going to Brooklyn. And then as far as Drummond goes, Drummond's going to get traded. He's not going to get bought out. But if you think that Andre Drummond's going to get a first-round pick, he's not, because his production, yes, it's great. The box score stats, he's averaging about 17 and 15. That's incredible. But if you look at just the eye test, when you're a player and a big man that's as big as he is and you shoot under 50% from the floor, I mean, that's just not looking good right there. So he's putting up these big numbers on a Cavs team who, I'll admit, they've started like slacking off a little bit here. They're going through an incredibly rough patch, but he was the focal point with the Cavs for the most part, other than Colin Sexton. He's not going to be that on a contending team anywhere. So if he goes to a contending team, he's not going to get that much value back. But the places I can see him going, Toronto was reported. I don't really see how he lands in Toronto without the Raptors trading a guy like Kyle Lowry away, which I don't see why the Raptors want to do that. I don't see why the Cavs would want to get Kyle Lowry. I also saw a package with Norman Powell and a bunch of guys. I don't think the Raptors are going to want to give up Norman Powell. He's been a solid two-guard for them. But I think the Celtics, they have a $28 million trade exception that they can use for Drummond. They'd have to add on another guy. I don't know who that other guy would be, but I can see him going to Boston. Charlotte is in desperate needs of a center, so I can surely see him being traded to Charlotte at some point. They have a bunch of big contracts that they can add on with that. I've always thought Terry Rozier makes sense for them because they open up playing time for LaMelo Ball, for Devontae Graham, guys like that. Then you add on a guy like Cody Zeller who's on an expiring contract, and you get Andre Drummond. I think that's a fair trade for both sides right there. And then another team to look out for, the Spurs right now are in the playoff hunt. LaMarcus Aldridge is having a historically bad year for himself, and he's the team's starting center right now. Maybe they flip those contracts, add like a second-round draft pick. Doesn't hurt the Cavs at all because his contract will be expired, so they can just let him walk. Just let him play out the rest of the season in Cleveland, and the Spurs get their center that can help them make a playoff run potentially.
I like it. I like it a lot. Brendan, your thoughts on Jacob's takes and where you think Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond might end up?
Yeah, he kind of took mine with Griffin about going to Los Angeles, kind of making a return to the Lakers. Griffin is just a guy that's going to give you like 15 to 20 a night, solid minutes off the bench, and find a way to just contribute in a small way. If Anthony Davis can't be on the floor, you can bring him off the bench and give you some production. But he's just in a point in his career where he really needs to know his place. He's not going to be a starter for much longer. Or that, go to Boston. I saw a report for like a trade with Kemba Walker and Blake Griffin, swapping those guys, which would be really weird. I don't think it happens, but he's just in a weird spot. Go to Miami, like Jacob said, would be a good fit. Maybe going to Dallas and playing with Luka would be a good fit because he's just finishing his career out in Detroit. It's just it's a tarnish on his career. I know he hasn't had the best career. Never really lived up to the hype. Had a good start with the Clippers, then just had a huge fallout and a fall off in his career. As far as Andre Drummond goes, it's going to be really hard for the Cavs to make a solid trade here because if any GM with the right mind and knows basketball is watching Andre Drummond play with the Cavaliers, he really knows how to make a team worse. And that has been the case with Andre Drummond and the Cavaliers. It just does not look like he wants to be out there on the floor playing with these guys. The amount of times that he just threw a careless steal into the opponent's hands. I can buy like a candy bar if I had $1. If I had a nickel for any time that he threw a steal. It's just that bad with Andre Drummond. He, like Jacob said, if he goes to Toronto, who are you going to get for him? You just put the Cavs in a really bad position to try and look towards the future for this franchise. And as far as the Cavs go, this is just another case where they bring on a star player and then they don't care about playing for the Cavs. So it's a really tough spot for Andre Drummond and the Cavs right now.
Yeah, I'm going to say Drummond to Detroit for Blake Griffin. No, I'm kidding. It's gonna Drummond back to Detroit now. I like both of your guys' takes. I can see a lot of these things actually playing out. I like the Charlotte take. There's a lot of rumors Drummond and Brooklyn might be a matchup there, and if that happens, yeesh. But
making another trade with the Nets,
give us.
And it didn't work out for him in the first place.
Yeah, give us Kyrie back. No, I'm kidding. But it's going to be interesting to definitely see where two of these big names land. Like you guys said, Blake Griffin, definitely the production's fallen off, but still a big name in the league, can still add some production. I like your off-the-bench take for LA. That'd be crazy if he went there as well. For Drummond, you're going to get the rebounds. Some stupid shots are definitely going to be thrown up, but he gets you a lot of second chances. So I think a lot of teams that are in that stage, like, hey, we need a big man, and we're definitely competing. Drummond's going to be the guy they try to get, but we'll see. They both could end up staying in Detroit and Cleveland for all we know, but it's highly doubtful. I think I agree with Jacob. I think Griffin will get bought out, not traded, but I think Drummond's definitely getting traded, especially when you look at that center's room for Cleveland. Why do you need him when you got a 23-year-old, more productive center in Jarrett Allen and depth as well in the big man? A lot of trees there in Cleveland, but we'll see what happens as the season continues. We'll take a look at last week now. We'll talk about last week. Philadelphia stays on top. Utah staying hot. LA's both staying hot. Cleveland still slides. New York's still in the mix. Toronto's on the rise. Miami's on the rise. Dallas on the rise. Three teams that we all figured would turn it on at some point are starting to slide up the standings as Toronto's in the 7th seed. Miami's just a game and a half out of that 8th spot. And then Dallas back to 13 and 15, closing on that 500 record. Thoughts on the last week, Jacob, in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I take away is actually from the game last night. I mean, I've kind of been, I don't want to say I've hated on the Brooklyn Nets that much. I just haven't fully bought into the hype and believed in the team yet. But after last night, they're on 24 points to one of the hottest teams in the NBA in the Phoenix Suns. And they had no Kevin Durant, they had no Kyrie Irving, yet James Harden willed them to a comeback win. It was just a great game to watch, especially at the end. I'm starting to buy into the Nets more and more now. And I'm a big Philadelphia guy. I think Philadelphia has what it takes to potentially get to the finals. But if you have the Nets doing that, like James Harden by himself, just willing his team to a win, and then you throw in KD and then you throw in Kyrie, they're going to be so hard to beat if they keep this up. And I think they're really starting to gel a lot more now, too. Like how you said, they've won 4 straight games. So they're definitely starting to gel a lot more. So that's my main takeaway from the week. But some of the other ones, the Knicks, we're not talking about the Knicks enough. I think they have what it takes to potentially make the playoffs. Tom Thibodeau, he's kind of gotten a bad rep from what happened in Minnesota, the failed Jimmy Butler experiment, and really kind of just messing up Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins' growth. But everybody seems to forget that his first coaching job was with the Bulls. He won the Coach of the Year one year. He consistently got the Bulls back into the playoffs time and time again. He coached Derrick Rose to his MVP season, and now Derrick Rose is on the Knicks. He's obviously not going to be an MVP, but he can be a solid point guard for them. And the guy we're not talking about enough, which I apologize to this guy here on this podcast because he was not in my list of all-stars, but now he would be. Julius Randle is having himself a career year. That guy, I just feel bad that I've been underappreciating his value until this week and seeing what he did. Dropped a 40-point game this week. I mean, this guy is going to lead the Knicks into the playoffs, I think, as a potential 6 to 8 seed right there. I just think that the Knicks have what it takes on the defensive side of the ball, and they have Julius Randle, who's going to lead them on offense, and you have Derrick Rose, too, and Tom Thibodeau is really not that bad of a coach. But finally, my final thing that I took away from this week, I'm not going to say that the Lakers are going to have a drastic drop-off, but they're going to struggle a little bit here these next couple of games because Anthony Davis being out is huge. And I'm not saying LeBron can't do it. LeBron can definitely carry the Lakers. But all I'm going to say to the Lakers, they just need to be careful. They're playing the Jazz. They're playing the Nets. They're playing the Suns in the next couple of weeks that Anthony Davis is supposed to be out. So really, they're playing a tough part of their schedule. I still think they're going to win games, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying they need to be careful here. They need to adjust to life without Anthony Davis right now because I don't think they're going to catch the Jazz in this stretch because I just think the Jazz are going to continue their hot ways. But they need to be careful not to fall below the Clippers. If they fall maybe a game below them, I wouldn't worry. But it's just right now, see how they play without Anthony Davis. LeBron is the guy that can do it, that can keep your team afloat without Anthony Davis, but it's still a significant loss, and hopefully it's not more than just 2 to 3 weeks that they're saying Anthony Davis is out, because that would be horrible for the league and horrible for the Lakers.
Yeah, and you talked about the Timberwolves a little bit there. D'Lo out 4 to 6 weeks, as if that bad couldn't get any worse, as they said at 7-21. Also, breaking news, Tim Tebow is retiring from baseball as of 18 minutes ago. So we will not see him in the Subway Series this season. Brendan, your thoughts on the last week's action?
He was my all-star this year. No, I take a look at this past week, and 2 things really catch my eye. 2 hot and cold teams. One, Milwaukee, extremely disappointing and overrated right now. Not the team that they are. I just don't know if we really should be taking Milwaukee seriously anymore. They had an early bounce in the bubble in the playoffs. Now they're on this 4-game losing streak where they just lost to Toronto the other night. Last night, I think it was. They lose to Oklahoma City. It's not a team that you need to be losing to if you want to be taken seriously in the East. They lose to the Jazz. I know the Jazz really hot right now, obviously, but they lost that game by 14 points. Didn't really make it exciting. And then they had a close loss to Phoenix. And that's the team that I was also going to talk about. The Suns right now just are the most exciting team and kind of underrated team that I'm really like watching right now. Heck of a win against Milwaukee, obviously. Took down Philadelphia. Was not easy to do. Over a week ago, they beat Boston by 9. So they're playing their best basketball of the season right now. Had a close loss last night. It was to Brooklyn, but only 4 points. So they take a lot away from that game. Just Devin Booker and Chris Paul meshing really well right now. DeAndre Ayton providing a lot of production underneath at the center position for the Suns. I don't know if they are, a bet to go on a run in the postseason, but just playing really good basketball, and creating havoc in the Western Conference right now, which is fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree. Suns playing really good basketball, 17-10. They're sitting there, 5th seed in the West. As far as 2 hots, 2 colds for me, I was kind of thinking the same thing. 2 hots, I think the Jazz are the obvious pick. 8-game win streak, 19 of their last 20. And then another hot team that isn't getting talked about enough is Portland. They've won 5 in a row, 8 of their last 10. They're sitting at 17-10, 4th in the West. Always that team you see squeak into the Western Conference playoffs at 7 or 8. But this year we could see them in that top half of that Western Conference behind LA's and potentially Utah if they can stay hot. But Lillard just lighting the world on fire right now, and that Portland team is really fun to watch. The 2 cold teams for me, I think the obvious one is the Cleveland Cavs. They've lost 8 in a row. They've lost 9 of their last 10. They at one point I believe were 10-9, and they're 10-19 now, or they were 9-9 and they're 10-19 now. So just showing how bad they've fallen down to 13th in the East. They're not looking good. They've had a very tough schedule in February. So that's part to do with it. I mean, they played Portland and the Clippers in the past week. They've played Milwaukee. They've played the Lakers. Just a really tough schedule. Sixers were in there. But they're really falling off. The other cold team for me, the Houston Rockets, they've lost 6 in a row. They were 11-10 inside the playoff field. Now they're 11-16, sitting 13th in the West. And we kind of thought this might happen at some point after Harden left. Can Houston keep it up with just John Wall and Christian Wood and some of those other role players? But here we see it 6 in a row now, really struggling, and this could be the drop-off of Houston that we all expected starting right in front of us right now. So that's my take as far as hot and colds. But this next week has some really good matchups going into it. So I just picked out the top 3, and we'll kind of make our predictions and who we think will win and why. So the 3 games I highlighted for this week: Brooklyn at the Lakers this Thursday night. We've already had a little talk. LeBron says, yeah, they might score a lot, but look at their record. They're just now getting hot. They were 14-12 last week. So we'll see. We'll talk about that one. The other one, can Utah stay hot as they play the Clippers on the road? 2 20-plus win teams. 2 of the top 3 teams in the West right now. That will be a fun one to watch. And the other one we'll talk about is Brooklyn Clippers Sunday night. So quite the weekend of basketball here, Thursday through Sunday, as Brooklyn travels to LA to take on the Clippers. Jacob, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on these 3 games, who you got and why?
So, yeah, Brooklyn and the Lakers, we're not going to see every superstar here. Anthony Davis is obviously out for the Lakers. I believe I got confirmation that Kevin Durant will be out tomorrow night as well. Not sure about Kyrie Irving right now. So these are going to be some depleted rosters. I would have said with Kevin Durant playing that I would have taken the Nets. I'm going to go Lakers here, though, just based on the fact that it's not a knock on James Harden and if Kyrie Irving plays. It's not a knock on them. It's just the depth of the Nets I don't necessarily love. Yeah. And LeBron on the Lakers, you're going to Los Angeles. LeBron's obviously hearing all the noise that the Nets are potentially going to meet them in the finals, which is very well could be a potential finals preview. I just think LeBron's not going to let it happen where he's going to lose to a depleted Nets team on his own home court. So I'm going to say Lakers there, mainly only because they're the home team in this case. I know that it's not really home court advantage really anymore with the whole COVID pandemic. But I just think the Lakers here, since Kevin Durant's out, will end up winning. Jazz Clippers, I'm going to go Jazz here just because I think that the Jazz are so red hot right now. It's just the way that they play defense. I think that they can limit the Clippers. And the Clippers, too, they've been hit with the injury bug here recently. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they've been having some injuries in the past week. So we don't even know if they're going to be playing in this game. Hopefully they will be back because it's always better when you see them on the court as well. But even if they are back, I still think that the Jazz would end up winning just because of the way they're playing right now, the superstar power with Donovan Mitchell putting the ball in the basket, Jordan Clarkson as well getting red hot, and that defense. Jazz will win that game. And then Nets Clippers, this is an extreme toss-up just because of like how I said about the other two games, just the health of these two teams. If the Clippers have Kawhi and Paul George, I think they could win. And if the Nets get fully healthy with Kevin Durant coming back, which I expect Kevin Durant to be back in time for this game, then the Nets will win. So I'm going to just say here, Nets are going to end up winning just because of that offensive firepower. It's going to be a great game because especially Kawhi and Paul George are there. Kawhi and Paul George are in this game. It's going to be a great defensive unit against a great offensive unit. So it would just be fun to see who's going to prevail in that one. But I'm going to put my money right now on the Nets just because they're gelling at the right time and they're really starting to feed off each other a lot more. So I'm going to go Brooklyn here in this last game of the week.
Love it. Love it. Brendan, your thoughts on these three marquee matchups in the weekend ahead?
Yeah, so first game, Nets and Lakers. I agree with Jacob. I don't think LeBron would let himself lose to the Nets twice. That was the Clippers that they played the first game of the year. But anyways, the Lakers winning this one without Kevin Durant, without Kyrie Irving. I don't like the rest of the depth from Brooklyn. Put LeBron against that team, and LeBron's going to win 9 out of 10 times. Utah Jazz Clippers, both teams playing really hot basketball right now. But I just look at Utah, and you can't win every game. The Clippers, I don't know how healthy they're going to be, but they still have Lou Williams and Pat Beverly and Ibaka. They do have good depth on that team, so I'm going to go with the Clippers in that one to upset Utah. Then the final game, Nets and Clippers. If Kevin Durant is playing in this one, I'll take Brooklyn. They're definitely a hot and cold team. People are changing their thoughts on the Nets every now and then. It seems like no one really knows what kind of team they're going to be late in the season. But still, if you put Kevin Durant and James Harden on the floor, I think they'll be able to pull that one out and beat the Clippers.
Love it. So for me, I am taking Lakers Thursday night as well. I agree with both your takes. I don't think LeBron's going to let that happen, especially with KD not being on the court. I'm agreeing with Jacob for the Jazz-Clippers game. I'm going Jazz just because of the type of basketball they're playing. They're red hot. I see them getting to the 20 out of 21 here on Friday night. And with the Clippers just dealing with lingering minor injuries, I think you'll see a little bit of fatigue. And they're playing a very tough defense in Utah. And that's why I got the Jazz winning Friday night. And as far as Sunday night, I'm going Nets as well. Tough weekend for the Clippers for Jacob and I's predictions. They go 2 losses, get to the 10-loss mark. But that's just what happens when you have a tough weekend, when you have Utah, who's the best team in basketball right now as far as how they're playing, and then the Nets, who, when they have those 3 guys on the court, they'll drop 150 on your head in a 4-quarter game. So I'm going Nets on Sunday night. And that wraps up my 3 picks for this weekend. And that wraps up our conversation about basketball. It's now time for last call. Shorter episode, obviously, without football. And baseball still not quite there. The episodes are going to be a little shorter until that happens. But we'll jump into last call. So obviously this past weekend we got, or this early this week, we got quite the snowstorm here in Alliance, Ohio. So that spurs the question. Brendan, I'll start with you. Would you rather have a snowball fight, or would you rather build a snowman on a snow day?
I gotta go Yeah, I gotta go snowball fight.
Okay.
Building a snowman is too hard and tiring, and
Mini
then you
balls
gotta
are
watch
easier.
it melt, which is disappointing. Snowball fight, you can definitely have a lot more fun with it. Being your friend in the head with a snowball.
Going for the head.
It's one of my favorite scenes in Elf when Buddy the Elf is like Clayton Kershaw out there and has a cannon beating a little kid 20 yards out with a snowball. It's fantastic. So I definitely have to go snowball fight. I can't throw a snowball like that. Wish I could, but it's definitely a lot more fun than building a snowman.
All you got to say, Brendan, is if you're going for the head, make sure there's no rocks in the snowball. Jacob, snowball fight or snowman?
Yeah, I'll agree with Brendan here. Nothing against building a snowman. I love doing that, but what I love building even more than a snowman is a snow fort. And when I was a little kid, I can remember we'd have these epic snowball fights where we're building these snow forts with all we're like going under these bunkers. It was like we were in an actual war, and then we just started chucking snowballs at each other. It's just a great feeling, and it's a lot of fun. Like nothing, like I said, nothing against building a snowman. It's just like, you build it, you're done. Snowball fight, like how Brendan said, can beam it at someone's head. You got some coming at your head. It's just more of an exhilarating experience, I feel. So I'm going snowball fight.
So you're going for the Squidward scene in SpongeBob where he builds the
Exactly.
fort up in the air.
Oh, exactly.
I'm going snowball.
That makes it even better.
Yeah, I'm going snowball fight as well. I think, like Brendan said, snowman's a lot of work and then just ends up melting away. Snowball fight, I feel like there's more memories made in it. I will say it also can lead to some heat. Me and my stepbrother got into it once during a snowball fight because of a face shot. So it definitely has its disadvantages, but it's really fun. And it's a really easy, quick way to just start making memories with brothers and friends. So I'm going snowball fight as well. And for the last topic of discussion, as of recently, I feel like after the podcast or before the podcast, we're not talking where people can hear us. We've been discussing breakfast food a lot. Whether it's me and Riley talking about sausage, biscuits, and gravy, or it's the pancake waffle discussion. So I'm going to ask, Jake, I'm going to start with you. What's your favorite breakfast food?
All right, well, I'm going to be real with both of you right here. I hate breakfast. I don't eat breakfast that much, to be completely honest, unless it's like something really good. Then I just don't really care enough to eat it. But here, I would say, ever since I started coming here, it's the chocolate chip muffin at Kit Cafe. I mean, those things just hit hard every single time.
That's a good one.
I love that. But I'm still going to go with something that I've been eating since I was a kid, too. Chocolate chip pancakes. But I don't like plain pancakes. I don't like anything, like any pancake, unless there's chocolate chips in it. So there's got to be chocolate chips. And I guess it's kind of a theme, too, because I'll only eat the muffin if there's chocolate chips in it, too. So if there's chocolate in my breakfast, I'll probably eat it.
Jacob, I'm not mad at you all because I'm the exact same way. Not a big waffle or pancake fan, but you put chocolate chips in them, just hits a different way, and I can eat 10 of them. Brendan, your favorite breakfast food?
Yeah, I love me some chocolate chip waffles and pancakes. Nothing better. Also love some strudel and sausage. Eat those two combined together, and you're filled up for a long time. You won't even have to eat lunch. You're good. But yeah, like Jacob said, it's hard to be hungry in the morning. For me, usually I eat a lot before I go to bed, so that I'm not like really hungry in the morning when I wake up. I'd eat like a granola bar for breakfast normally, but yeah, if it's a special occasion, give me some pancakes and waffles, and I'm good to go.
Yeah, I'm not a big breakfast fan either, like Jacob said. I hate eggs. I find myself eating cereal and Pop-Tarts probably the most if I ever have breakfast. I don't have breakfast a lot. But if I had to say my favorite breakfast food, it's Riley and I's discussion of sausage, biscuits, and gravy. I can eat that at any given time of the day. I don't even see it as a breakfast food. I just see it as food for the soul. It's so good. It just hits different anytime you have sausage, biscuits, and gravy. Oh, like Riley said, for Thanksgiving, he's on the gravy train. I have a weakness for gravy. Gravy is definitely very good. So I'm going sausage biscuits and gravy for my favorite breakfast food. But that does it for episode 15 of RaiderZone here. Again, we thank everyone that does listen. For Brendan Devaney, Jacob Utar, I'm Will Brienza, and we'll see you next week as we talk more about the world of sports.